Hi, thank you all for being here for my talk titled Fortifications Beyond Modernist Dualisms. All right, so fortifications are a central component of Mesoamerican archaeology. Webster, for example, famously documented martial architecture at Becan to transform how 20th century scholars viewed the Mayas. Whereas Webster had to vigorously defend the claim of fortifications at Becan, today many scholars of the Maya are likely to accept the presence of martial architecture through the analysis of surface architecture alone. Nevertheless, some classic debates remain. And in this paper, I argue that the tacit or explicit acceptance of Western modernist ontological and epistemic frameworks, in other words, onto-epistemology, hampers the ability of researchers to fully understand Maya warmaking. Namely, the use of a dualist framework leads to the application of improper conceptual frames for analyzing the Maya archaeological record and leads to faulty claims about the martial past or lack thereof. To escape the dualist trap of Western modernity, I argue that archaeological analysis should begin by braiding archaeology with Maya onto epistemology. And by braiding, I'm drawing from an Anishinaabe conceptual framework that can be found in the works of Sonia Adelaide, Robin Kimmerer, among others. So to demonstrate this approach, I braid Hach Winik onto epistemology with the archaeological analysis of fortifications at the site of Zunun, Chiapas, Mexico. So I begin by defining the dualist trap of Western modernity. Next, I discuss Kash, which is an important aspect of Hach Winik onto epistemology. Then I apply Kash to the archaeological case study of Sunun. And then I provide some conclusions. So anthropologists have long grappled with the limitations and pitfalls of binary thinking. Salins, in his 1976 book, Culture and Practical Reason, highlights how materialist versus symbolic arguments pervade anthropological theory, from E.B. Tyler and Lewis Henry Morgan to Marvin Harris, Levi Strauss, and others. Ortner highlights the same dualist dilemma in her now classic work, Theory and Anthropology, since the 60s. Both Salins and Ortner propose theories of practice to escape materialist symbolic or subject-object traps that separate nature from culture or people from structure. This struggle to escape the dualism of Western modernist epistemology can be found in a myriad of other works, including theories of landscape, phenomenology, embodiment, and hybridity, to name a few. And the trap that I'm highlighting is ultimately that of Western modernity. By Western modernity, I build on the works of Escobar and Mignolo to mean a rhetoric and worldview that grew out of the European Enlightenment. And this perspective espouses a rationalism that is secular, progressive, technoscientific, and dualist. The, at times, tacit acceptance of Western modernity as the primary conceptual framework for determining knowledge claims creates major issues in the archaeology of warfare. And to illustrate my point, I focus on the use of symbolism or ritual to undermine claims of past warfare. Many of us in this room have likely encountered some variation of the following question. Couldn't the fortification walls just be a ritual or symbolic barrier? And scholars of war tend to perpetuate a bifurcated view of the human experience by, for example, stressing materialist, in other words, economic, ecological, or reproductive explanations for war that relegate seemingly immaterial factors such as agency, subjectivity, and meaning to secondary roles. To escape the dualist subject-object trap of Western modernity, a more recent archaeological trend is to highlight that war in general, and fortifications in particular, have martial and symbolic aspects. Walls, gates, weapons, armor, etc., can be potent symbols because of their associations with martial force. Scholars of war have also emphasized landscape to highlight the meaningfulness of experience and place. In line with efforts to move beyond the dualist trap of Western modernity, I apply the Hach Winik onto epistemology to study fortifications. This work is part of a larger paper that I've been developing with Josue Lozada Toledo, Alice Balsanelli, and Josue Gomez Vasquez. Cash means selva or rainforest in Achtan, Hachtan is the language of the Hach Winik, who are more popularly known as the Lacandon Maya. And the following discussion of Hach Winik onto-epistemology is drawn from teachers and collaborators who live in Puerto Viejo, Metzaboc, and Naha in Chiapas, Mexico. Their gift of open conversation, along with critical engagement, inspired my foundational premise of challenging Western modernist hegemony. So according to Hach Winik onto epistemology, we all exist as a part of a gash or forest and are connected to everything through vitalities that animate and exist throughout the cosmos. Gash is a gigantic living being endowed with Bishan, which is an interior vital principle shared by all beings in the cosmos, humans, plants, animals, and deities. Because everything shares in Bishan, all entities, including those deemed objects in Western modernist terms, are animated and have personal qualities. In other words, personhood. According to Rafael Tarano Lopez, yes, we build the houses and the boats, and we make the milpas, but they are alive too. They all have a spirit. The house talks, it has a head, a heart, and a stomach. You can hear it talking at night. Boats are alive too. They have a soul. They swim just like the crocodiles, which are their siblings, and the milpa has a very strong spirit. The maze is alive. It talks, it sings, it dances. Everything is alive. Nekushan. Moreover, Changin from Naha states that caves are where the gods live. They protect the stones. They are alive. If you hit a stone, it will seek for revenge, and the god will get angry. The gods take care of the stones. Also, they protect the Maya ruins, the lakes. There's always someone protecting those places. Living in an animated cosmos influences Hachiwinic practices because of an awareness of interacting with a multitude of subjects who have owners or protectors, which is true of other Maya peoples. The other Maya peoples also conceptualize the cosmos in this way. So to quote Thompson, he long ago highlighted, and I quote, all creation is both alive and active for the Mayas. Trees, rocks, and plants are animate beings who aid or oppose them, end quote. Moreover, the self was, and among some descendants, is still conceived as partible or permeable. In other words, individual as opposed to individual. The personal qualities of the world are exemplified in how Mesoamerican peoples conceptualize mountains. And it is well known that mountains, whether as geologic features or architecture, are powerful figures who have personal qualities and can even engage in warfare. On page 9 of Códice Maya de Mexico, a mountain or wheats person is depicted as a warrior taking a captive. Mountains are also homes for tutelary deities who can aid in war, and as a result, mountains, especially mountaintops, were commonly targeted in pre-colonial combat, and their destruction often signified the climax of a martial engagement or campaign. And of course, we can look at Aztec writing for examples of this. We can look at ethnographic examples like in the Jacaltec Mayas of mountains being important figures and actors in war. And so considering the diversity of persons that exist in Gash, I examined war making at the post-classic and early Spanish colonial period community of Zunun. So situated within the Hach Winik community of Puerto Viejo, Metzaboc, Zunun is an archaeological site that is roughly 14 hectares during the height of seasonal flooding. And I have to move quickly, but a deeper discussion of the site can be found in Hernandez 2017 and 2023. Excavations revealed Zunun's residents live in a socially stratified community during the late post-classic and early Spanish colonial period. Elites also occupied the highest terrain within the community. Zunun has some important qualities that made it a place where past Mayas built a fortified community. It is a peninsula that becomes an island when the local water table rises during the rainy season. Moreover, the site is rugged and mountainous. To understand the topography, one must go up and down and up some more, and then down and up and some more, while being careful not to fall off the occasional cliff edge or steep mountain slope. Within Zunun's rugged lacustrine setting, late post-classic Mayas created a layered defense that incorporated local topography and hydrology. Multiple masonry walls blocked the southern land route into the site. For would-be attackers, the gentlest slope into the site is blocked by two dry-laid masonry walls that are marked with the red squares on the right. The narrow corridor into the site is flanked by two ridges, and this corridor is currently used by local Mayas to patrol the federally protected areas of Metzabolk. And if you look again at the map on the right, you can see that the blockaded path is part of a series of walls that run along a ridge. And these walls are marked by the black square on the right. Thinking in terms of tactics, warriors would likely attack Sunun during the dry season, otherwise they would need to engage in an amphibious assault. The land route into the site is blocked by multiple masonry walls, including those running on the ridge that I just discussed. If Sunun's perimeter barricades were breached, then attackers would have to contend with a broken and rugged physical environment. Within this mountainous terrain and landscape, within this mountainous terrain, higher elevations would have provided more layers of protection, which is why elites occupied the highest terrain. Koch pushes this analysis further to consider how everything exists within a rainforest, which is a gigantic living being. Mountains, trees, or anything else could become animate, have personal qualities, and engage in warfare. Far from a passive backdrop, Sunun's peaks and mountainous terrain were active participants in the fortification process and may have been petitioned to engage in combat, like in the Códice Maya de Mexico. Moreover, by building fortifications that incorporate water and terrain, Sunun's inhabitants must be careful because bodies of water can get angry if you disturb them, and a stone can seek vengeance if someone smashes it. The fortification wall is not a passive, lifeless object, it has a vitality. Lack of respect for the wall may one day cause it to seek revenge. Even implements of war, such as lithics, should be considered as having vitality because, according to Koch, a stone can seek vengeance if you abuse it. What does this mean for archaeology? If we accept the Hach Winik onto-epistemic framework of Koch, which is similar to how many past and present Mayas experience the world, then mountains of evidence for war making have been overlooked. Literal mountains sometimes. It's because, a mountain, even when devoid of martial architecture, can still constitute evidence of war. That is, if we move beyond the subject-object trap of Western modernity to see how supposed objects share in the qualities of personhood. Taking Maya onto epistemology seriously requires a radical rethinking of archaeology. In the case of the Hach Winik, there is no word for landscape and nature because they are Koch, or the forest itself, which is alive and home to a multitude of other living subjects. Furthermore, an object, or something devoid of life, agency, voice, and ultimately subjectivity, makes little sense. In many ways, privileging Western modernist onto epistemology in Maya archaeology perpetuates the ethnocentric trap exemplified when Diego de Landa forced a Maya person to write the Spanish alphabet in Maya signs. By braiding Maya onto epistemic frameworks with archaeology, I argue that we will create a more rigorous field and gain a richer understanding of Maya warmaking. Thank you very much.